guys, welcome back to my channel, Board Games in a Minute. So this is my top 10 of 2024 videos, so welcome. I know I always get more viewers on these top 10 videos than I do on the rest of my videos, so do consider subscribing if you like what you see. So before we begin, I just want to, talk a little bit about what this list does or does not contain as usual. So as usual, it does not contain preview copies. And of course, the obvious reason is because not everyone has access to those games. Another reason is because I don't get access to every preview game there is either. So those games, like for example, Yonder, which I absolutely loved and played a number of times in 2024, that will be on next year's list, very likely in the year that it's actually released for the general public. So yeah, so that's the obvious, reason why preview copies are not going to be on this list. This year I tried really hard to include only games that are 2024 games. So not games that I played which were new to me and I absolutely loved, like for example, Trolls and Princesses. So every game on this list is a 2024 game this year, not new to me games that I absolutely loved. And finally, there are so many games and so little time. When you are a full-time working professional and content creation is not your full-time job, it is very hard to play all the amazing games which came out in the last year. And it's also difficult to play some games more than once. Like there may be games that I absolutely loved when I played them, but do not have the opportunity to play more times because people don't want to play them or they want to play other games and time is limited. So there's a variety of reasons why some games may appear on this list even if I've only played them once or twice. So that is all I want to say about that. So now let's get into my 2024 top 10, and of course I'll do runner-ups at the end. So let's begin with number 10. So my number 10 game of this year is Cities, which is from Devir Games, designed by Steve Finn and Phil Walker Harding, and it is for 2 to 4 players. The art is done by Jorge Tabanera. So this game is a city building game for 2 to 4 players, which I think I just mentioned, and you are going to be drafting the building pieces which you need to build on your cities, but you're also drafting the tiles, you're drafting your own scoring cards, you're drafting features to add to your city. So it's just a really interesting game in which you, in each round, are going to determine what's most important to you, because you're going to go around and around placing a worker in each row to draft one of those 4 things in that round. And so as the game is progressing, each player is kind of forming their own little game with the scoring cards that they are drafting. And of course, you can kind of screw people over by maybe drafting something that someone else might want. It's just a really clever drafting city building game, which is very easy to learn and easy to play and will hit the table many, many, many times, as it did for me. So that is why it is my number 10 game of this year. And I do recommend it and think you should check it out if you haven't already. My number 9 game of this year is Harvest, which is from Keymaster Games, designed by Trey Chambers, and the art is done by Tiara Connor. And this is a worker placement game for 1 to 4 players. I absolutely loved this game. I love how you can, purchase seeds and then grow those seeds into crops and then harvest those crops. So you are seeing your farm through all the stages of production, which is really cool. You are clearing out space in your farm to add upgrade tiles, and I like how the tiles that you start with in your farm are the tiles that you are then clearing out, which then appear in the market for either you or other players to purchase. It's just very clever. I just really love all the different locations on the board that you can go to, and of course the art is just stunning and the different characters are just fun to play with. You have unique player powers, and this game is just very replayable for all of those reasons, and very high production quality. So if you love worker placement games, I feel like that this would be a staple in your collection as a worker placement game, and just a very evergreen worker placement game, which I know it will be for me. And so for that reason, it had to appear on this list because I am a huge fan of worker placement games. So yeah, and I did back the expansion, which is the fall expansion, because I absolutely love autumn. It's my favorite season. So I'm looking forward to how that changes up the game or what it adds to it. So yeah, so my number 9 of this year was Harvest. My number 8 game for this year is Fromage, which is from Road to Infamy Games, and it is designed by Matthew O'Malley and Ben Rossett, and the art is done by Pavel Zova. Now, this is a worker placement game for 1 to 4 players, and I swore that this would be my number 1 game of 2024. However, unfortunately, it would have been my number 1 game, very likely, or in the top 3, if it had not changed from the preview copy to the production copy. So it changed quite a bit in some of the areas of the board, and it would have been my number 1 game if they didn't change anything. So when I had the preview copy of this, when I was covering it for its Kickstarter, I played it on 3 separate occasions before I had to send it on to another previewer because of how much I love this game. However, they took away some of the things that for me made it more enjoyable, more intense, more competitive. They streamlined it, so it's a shorter game now. It still contains some of the really fun unique features in which your workers that you place won't come back to you and be available for you to use again until they're facing you. So you are rotating the board and you're trying to, create cheese in a different variety, different areas of the board, and you have different workers who can create different types of cheeses. But they took away some of the elements of the game from the preview copy, which I think made the game a lot more intense and more competitive. They streamlined it, so it's actually shorter to play now than it was when it was a preview copy. So unfortunately for that reason, it had to drop down in rankings for me. Otherwise, it would have been my number 1 game, and I wish more than anything that I had been able to keep the preview copy because that's the game that I would have continued to play with rather than the production copy. But it is still a very unique worker placement game with a rotating board, and I still love the theme, and I still love a lot of what you are doing in this game. So that's why it's still on the list, but unfortunately not as high as it could have been. I am curious what the expansion will add to this game, and hopefully it might bring back some of the things that I loved about the preview copy. I hope maybe make it a little bit more intense and competitive. We shall see. So yeah, so let's move on to the next game. My number 7 game of 2024 is a game which I backed on Kickstarter and which I was really looking forward to receiving, and that is Mistwind from First Fish Games, designed by Adrian Adamskew and Daryl Andrews, and it's for 1 to 5 players. Oh, and the art is done by Gordon Oscar. And this is a pick up and deliver game in which you have action discs which are numbered 1 through 5, and at the beginning of each round you have to discard an action disc, and then you're placing your action discs in various areas of the board in order to take a certain kind of action. And of course your action disc number will dictate who's going to take the action in that particular location first. And so there is a lot of player interaction, and there's going to be a lot of needing to revise your strategy throughout this game. And of course there's a whole pick up and deliver element where you're picking up certain goods and then trying to deliver them to other areas. Absolutely really enjoy this game. If you are looking for a highly interactive game, then this is the game for you. And the combination of Adrian Adamskew and Daryl Andrews has not disappointed me in the past. Like, one of the games that I absolutely love of theirs from years ago is Speakeasy Blues. So, definitely check out that game if you haven't already as well. But yeah, Mistwind is a really fun pick up and deliver game, and I just love how much player interaction there is and how you can really get in each other's way. So if you don't like that, then you might not enjoy it, but I particularly enjoy games where you have to start revising your strategy and trying to figure out what you can do because someone else screwed you over. So yeah, so that is my number 7 game of 2024. My number 6 game of 2024 is Explorers of Navoria. This is a worker placement tableau building game designed by Meng Chunlin, illustrated by Meng Chunlin, and published by Dronda Games. Now, full disclosure, I was sponsored to do an overview video of this game for its Kickstarter by Dronda Games, and also full disclosure, I do work for Dronda Games at Spiel Essen. I did the last 2 years, so putting that aside, I absolutely love this game, and that's why it's on this list. I absolutely love how you are drawing tokens from a bag and then deciding which action you want to take, like which card you want to add to your tableau. And then after all the players have done that a certain number of times per round, you're now going in reverse player order and using the tokens that were placed in order to add cards to your personal tableau to now take other actions on the board. So there's a lot to think about, and there are so many strategies, like paths to victory in this game. So you might decide to focus on exploration and like building out more of your huts in a certain region and trying to get as far along as possible as you can. You might be more focused on like, you know, just building up your tableau and, you know, set collection and trying to complete certain objectives. Like there's just a different, you know, number of ways that you can win this game with different strategies you can focus on. And the art is just so whimsical and so pretty, and I absolutely love it. And I just feel like it's just a really fun game with player interaction, and those are my jam. Like I love games with player interaction and which are just really fun and pleasant to play. So that is why this game is on my top 10 of 2024 this year. My number 5 game of 2024 is Tea Garden, which is designed by Tomas Holek, and it's illustrated by Barbora Ziskova, and it's published by Albi Games. Now, this is a deck building and worker placement game for 2 to 4 players. It's a really interesting game in which you are going to be placing down cards. You have a deck and you're placing down cards, and then those cards will kind of dictate which actions you can now take on the board. And you're trying to do a variety of things. You're like trying to build your own like little tea gardens and the various tea plantations. There's different tracks that you're trying to go up, like the Emperor track. You know, there's like set collection going on. You're trying to connect different things that you're collecting throughout the game. Like there's just quite a bit of variety in this game, which I really, really love. And I just love strategizing which cards to play at the right time and trying to get the other things that I really desperately need in this game in order to, you know, hopefully win and just, you know, outperform my opponents. But, you know, it's a really fun game. There's like different things that are like laid out on the board, which different people are trying to get. And if someone gets to it before you, then you might need to revise your strategy. And again, as I already mentioned, I really love games in which you are consistently needing to revise your strategy as the game is going on and just trying to perform the best that you can based with the circumstances you have when it's your turn. Like if you love deck building games and worker placement games, I highly recommend Tea Garden. It is a really fantastic game from a new designer who came out with 3 games in 2024. So yeah, a designer to definitely keep an eye out for as well, I think. So yeah, so that was my number 5 game of 2024. My number 4 game of 2024 is Paella Park. This is designed by Enrique Aguilar Almodovar and Eloy Pujadas, and the art is done by Esther Mendez, and it's published by Zombie Paella. Now, this is a point-to-point movement, push your luck kind of game for 2 to 5 players. The really fun part about this game is you are really simulating being at an amusement park. And when I say you are really simulating being at an amusement park, like for real, like you are going to be going on rides, you're going to be visiting different attractions, you're going to be vomiting, there's going to be a puke factor for each ride that you're going on. You might end up puking on yourself and puking on other players. You're trying to like visit various attractions and parks, but some areas of the park might be broken down, so you can't visit them in a certain round to help complete your objectives. Like it is just so much freaking fun. Like I absolutely love it. And there is an element of luck to this game as well. Like in some instances, you're going to be spinning this really fun wheel if you like win a certain thing, if you've completed doing a certain action, that is, and you might get something, you might not, you know, but there's other ways to get the things that you need in this game. You know, it's just a lot of fun. Like if you are looking for a game that is just pure fun and maybe not as much heavy strategy, which, you know, this game is not going to have heavy strategy in it, then definitely check out Paella Park. Like I've had so much fun playing this game, and everyone I've played with it, I feel like, has really enjoyed it. Like, I think if you want an amusement park game in your collection, this is one to definitely add to your collection because you are simulating being a visitor at an amusement park. It's not one of those games where you're building out an amusement park, because there are so many like that in this industry, right? There are so many board games about constructing an amusement park, but not so many about visiting them and puking on other people. Yeah, just a really, really fun game with really whimsical artwork. I just absolutely love this game, and I'm so glad I picked it up at Spiel Essen. Yeah, so definitely check out Paella Park if that sounds like your kind of thing. My number 3 game of 2024 is Oranges and Lemons, designed by Richard Dunning, and the art is done by Andre Schneider, and it's published by Medusa Games. This is a worker placement game for 2 to 5 players, which is based on a nursery rhyme, which, by the way, I've never read before. Now, as someone who's obsessed with London, I think as most people who watch my channel know, I absolutely love this game. Some people might think that the board is a little bit cluttered or just too busy. I absolutely love the aesthetic of this board. It really gives that 18th century London vibe, which is what this game is going for. Now, this is a really cool worker placement game in which each person starts out with a certain number of workers, and you're going to be having your workers on a turn order track. And you're going to go around during the worker placement phase, placing your workers in the different locations. Now, there are a total of 16 locations on this board that you can place a worker into. Now, that might seem like it's overwhelming, but really it's not. Once you start playing and you really learn what your strategy is and what things you need to do, you know, the great variety of worker placement locations will really be to your benefit and not seem like a hindrance in this game. Yeah, so it's really cool, and there's, you know, obviously more than one worker spot per location, but it also varies from player count to player count how many spots are available per location. So you're going to place your worker in a location going around and around based on the turn order track and how the workers are situated on that turn order track. Then you're going to resolve the locations beginning with location number 1 and increasing from there. And when you resolve a location, your worker then goes on to the turn order track. So if you were the first person in location number 1, you are going to be the first player in the next round unless someone took the special first player spot that came from a different location. So you kind of can also determine what your turn order will be for the next round, and you're going to be strategizing about, you know, what you want to do in this round and maybe what you want to do in the next round. Maybe you're just setting yourself up for the next round and not really focusing too much on this round. You might be getting screwed out of some spots that you really want to go to. There's just so much going on in this game. You're going to be completing contracts. You're going to be like collecting these vote tiles. You're just, you know, just doing a variety of things. There's bells that you're trying to build, which will give you special like abilities if you go to certain locations. Yeah, just a really fun worker placement game. If you love worker placement games, then this is one to definitely check out, just because of, you know, just the whole turn order thing and resolving all the different locations one by one, and the big variety of locations that you can go to. Just a really fantastic game, and highly recommend checking out Oranges and Lemons. My number 2 game of the year is Harmonies, which is designed by Johan Benvenuto, and the art is done by Maeva da Silva, and is published by Libellud Games. Now, this is an abstract strategy game for 1 to 4 players in which you are creating your own habitats and welcoming animals to those habitats. Now, you're going to be like placing these tokens, which are different colors, and creating the habitats that the animals want to reside in. So you're going to have trees, you're going to have buildings, you're going to have water, and there's different ways in which all of these things will score at the end of the game. So you're going to be scoring your trees and your water, your rivers. You're going to be scoring like all these different, like, you know, the prairies, like, you know, all these different areas in different ways at the end of the game. But throughout the game, you're also trying to place these tokens from these animal cards, and you're trying to rearrange the, you know, you're trying to arrange the tokens that you've collected in a certain way in order to satisfy as many animals as possible. Of course, once you place a token, you cannot remove it. And once you've placed an animal cube on top of a stack of tokens, whether that's 1 tall or 3 tall, you cannot remove the cube, and you can no longer add more tokens to it. So as the game progresses, it's going to get harder and harder to satisfy animal cards unless you plan really well. If you plan really well in this game, you might be able to satisfy a lot of animals and create lots of habitats for those animals while getting a lot of points. Like, it is extremely strategic, very thinky. So if you are looking for a really thinky game, like you just really want to, you know, exercise your brain and think really hard about certain things, like Harmonies is the perfect game for that. I think it is a staple in everyone's collection. It's akin to having Azul in one's collection. Like Azul, you know, I feel like is a staple in people's collections for abstract strategy games, and I think Harmonies is right up there. Like, if I had to choose between Harmonies and Azul now, I would definitely reach for Harmonies every time, I think. So yeah, so Harmonies, absolutely love it, and I think, you know, everyone needs to get this game. The only thing I have to complain about with this game is the pouch that the game comes with. Like, you're reaching into this bag and you're eventually going to get holes in this bag, and tokens are going to start falling, you know, out through the bag from the holes. So what I did is I went onto Etsy and bought an amazing pouch that actually matches the theme of the game as well. So there's like all these amazing sellers on Etsy who sell these pouches with different animals and whimsical artwork on them. And so now I'm super content with my Game of Harmonies with this amazing pouch which I purchased. So if you're going to get Harmonies, I highly recommend upgrading the pouch and then you are good to go. So yeah, Harmonies is my number 2 game of the year. My number 1 game of the year is Galileo Galilei, which is designed by Tomas Holek. The art is done by Michel Pichot and it's published by Pink Troubadour Games. Now, this is a game for 1 to 4 players in which you are exploring the nighttime skies. You are discovering planets and comets. You're trying to avoid the Inquisition. There is just so much going on in this game. It is seriously fantastic. So this is a dice worker placement game in which you're going to have different colored dice, and you are trying to combine those dice in order to make secondary colors in order to make major observations. So in order to do major observations in this game, you need to have a certain dice value and a certain color combination combined of different dice in order to make that color. Super fantastic. So there's also player interaction, and you're trying to kind of race to do certain things, because if you see someone else has dice, they might be aiming for a certain observation which is available for everyone to make, and you might be trying to get there first. But the actions you can take are determined by your telescope. So your telescope is going to be rotating. You're going to move it by 1 to 3 spaces on each turn, and then that's going to point to certain icons, which will dictate which actions you can take, but in whatever order you want on your turn. And you're going to be upgrading your telescope as the game progresses as well. So different players might be pursuing different strategies in this game. Like some players might be wanting to go up the different university tracks. Some players might be focusing on set collection and, creating their library. Some players might just be focused on observing more comments than other players. Like there's just a variety of ways in which you can get points in this game. One of the most interesting aspects of this game is the Inquisition and how punishing it can be. So as the game is progressing, you also are being mindful of the Inquisition and when game end is going to trigger, because if you are really far back on the Inquisition track, you are going to lose a lot of points at the end of the game. And you definitely need to fall back before you can start moving forward on the Inquisition track. Like there's just a lot to keep in mind when you're playing this game, and I love the player interaction in this game, especially towards the end when it becomes so tight. Like it becomes so tight as you are limited in what you can do at the end of the game, and most people are just going to be trying to observe comets at the end of the game, and there's only a limited number of comets at the end of the game. It just becomes very tight at the end when you're trying to squeeze out those last few points. A really fantastic space themed game. Like it is definitely up there. It's like in the top 3 space themed games for me. Another one is like Moon by Hakan Holgarder, which is another favorite designer of mine. But yeah, Thomas Holek came out with 3 games in 2024, and I played 2 of them. I did not play SETI, but oh my god, the 2 of his games which I played, just absolutely amazing games. And he's definitely a designer to keep your eyes open for and see what else he's making and coming out with. Just a really fantastic game, and I'm super glad that I picked it up at Essen. It was like the second game I purchased at Essen, the first one being Tea Garden. So yeah, so that is my number 1 game of the year. So I hope you enjoyed this list, and now I just want to make some closing remarks before we wrap up. So in 2024, there were a lot of amazing games which I had the opportunity to play. And unfortunately, not all of them could appear on this list. So just to mention some other games which I absolutely loved in 2024, like Skyrise from Roxley Games, Kavango because the theme really means a lot to me, animal conservation, just a really great like set collection game. Adventures of the South Tigris, which completed the South Tigris trilogy from Garphill Games and is by far the heaviest Garphill game I've ever played. Unfortunately, it did not make it to the top 10 just because of how difficult it is going to be to get this game to the table over and over again because of how heavy it is. And, so for that reason, unfortunately, it's not on the top 10, but I absolutely love Adventures of the South Tigris, and I really appreciate Garphill Games making a game highlighting the contributions of the Arab and Muslim world in the areas of science and medicine and all of that good stuff. Really enjoyed my play of River of Gold, which I know is a game that a lot of people probably have on their top 10 list. You know, unfortunately, again, there's just too many amazing games. You just cannot put every game on your top 10 list, right? Like Windmill Valley, really enjoyed my plays of that. Really great game. Rebel Princess is a trick-taking game, which is also from Zombie Paella, you know, which is the publisher of Paella Park, which I included on my top 10 list. Have really enjoyed Rebel Princess, and that is like now my to-go trick-taking game. So, you know, if I want to play a trick-taking game, I think Rebel Princess is the game that I would want to pull out in order to play. So highly recommend Rebel Princess. Really fantastic trick-taking game. Yeah, just a lot of really, really great games. Cat Packs, which I really enjoyed. You know, mostly because of the artwork, the cat artwork, but it was also a really fun game to play. Yeah, just a really interesting kind of set collection kind of tile placement game Cat Packs was. So recommend that if you're into cats. Yeah, so just a lot of really great games this year. And of course there's games which people have on their list which I don't have on mine, but I did play, like for example, Arcs. Like Arcs just maybe wasn't my cup of tea, and it's not going to appear on my top 10 list or my runner-ups. But yeah, you know, it was a game that I kind of enjoyed playing, and I think I want to try it out again, but just really not my cup of tea, I think. So yeah, and of course there's lots of games that people played which I have zero interest in, like these really big box games that are like full of miniatures and all of that stuff. Not my cup of tea, like, you know, typically not interested in games like that. So you won't find those kinds of games on my list. You also won't find cooperative games on my list because I'm not a huge co-op fan. I'm not a huge like dungeon crawler fan. So those kinds of games you won't find on my list. But you know, that is the beauty of the board game world, in which you can find all different kinds of content creators who do have interests which more align with your own interests. So, you know, there's, you know, if I have games on my list which are not your cup of tea, I'm sure there's a list out there where there are games that are your cup of tea, and so maybe your interests align more with those content creators. So I'm really looking forward to the games of 2025, and I have no doubt that Baghdad and Yonder are going to be on my 2025 list if they are actually published in 2025 and available to the public then. I've already played Baghdad, which is hitting Kickstarter in January, and Yonder I've played like 4 times with my pre-production preview copy. Absolutely love it, which is by one of my all-time favorite designers, Hakan Holgarder. So yeah, so really looking forward to 2025 and which games that brings us. So let me know in the comments below which games you like from the list that I have and which games you think do not deserve to be on the list. Just let me know what your top 3 games of 2024 were. And until next time, bye!